And so here I'm at where my delphinium was, and I had a big stalk that was here, and I cut it. There it is. It's tubular. So it was dying. All the little blossoms came off of it. And in here are the buds, and in the buds are some little seeds. They're little black seeds that are a little bit oblong. And as soon as this flower, because it blooms from the bottom going up, then these were the last blooms to come out, to bloom. So as soon as these are spent, then I'm going to deadhead it. I'm going to cut it about here, and you still get this lovely foliage. And it looks like, so in the armpits of the leaves is where it starts to grow the new stem of flowers, the secondary ones. So it might grow there and there, etc. So what I'm doing is collecting the seeds now, because I don't want it to volunteer here, because at the end of this growing season I'm going to transplant it to the front. It'll make a nice statement piece, and also because I want to grow food in this section, and I'll grow like lower lying plants like calendula and other flowers and other plants in this area. I have nasturtium volunteering over there. Above it is a pot with nasturtium in it. And so this is the deadhead here. I had cut it off of the main stem, and it's too big for this paper bag, so I'm going to cut it, and I'm just going to let it dry. I'm going to leave the bag open. You want everything to dry up, and all this green stuff is still moist. You want it to turn brown, and then you can collect the seeds, and you can keep the seeds and share it with others. And that's what I plan to do. And the flowers are so huge and magnificent, the blooms. I mean, tell me how stunning that is. Tell me that's not stunning. Look at that. It's gorgeous. But I don't want it dwarfing or covering my Shinseiki pear that's back there. And it's doing so well. I love it. I look forward to these fruit. I've also been deadheading the dianthus. Oh, I missed one right there. So if you deadhead it, it'll bloom even more and give you lots and lots of lovely flowers with the greenish silver foliage. So I realized I never really paid attention to how anise, dill, and fennel, which are kind of all in the same family of plants, how they start to, so this is the leaves unfurling. It has like these lacy leaves, and here it's starting to unfurl a new set of leaves. And over here it made like this big pod, and some of the leaves came out of it, and then now it's making another pod, and now it's not going to make leaves, it's going to seed. As you can see, these little flowers, they're going to be those either white or yellow flowers. So this is getting too old. I gotta harvest the fennel. This is fennel, and I've got about 5 big fennels on this area here. So I'm going to have to harvest it and eat it. Maybe in a stir fry or a soup. So I also deadheaded a bunch of calendula. So this is the bright orange variety, and this is the pale orange yellow variety. And I'm supposed to wait till these turn brown and dry up. However, much of the whole entire plant had deadheads, so I needed to deadhead it so that it will make new plants, new flowers, and the plant will stay alive. Because if it has too many deadheads on it, it'll signal that it's the end of the season. It'll spend too much energy on the deadheads and it won't make new flowers, and I want it to keep going for the rest of the summer. So here is a deadhead that actually dried out on its own, and this is what you want. So what you can do, because these are quite mature, is just you can't leave it in a cup like this, especially a tall skinny cup. It's gonna start to mold. It's got too much moisture. You want every single bit to dry out. All this green stuff's got to turn brown. So I plan on spreading it out on a newspaper, and then after that letting it just air dry, not in the sun. You don't want it to get heated because it'll kill the viability of the seeds. So I'm gonna place it on a newspaper and let it dry out somewhere in the shade. And then when it's dried out, then I'll take the seeds out of each of the blossoms, spread, and then stick them in a paper bag and store them for next year. But so far I've gathered 4 batches of calendula, and there's still more blooming. That's what I love about calendula. It always makes new blooms, and it makes so many. From 2 plants I've gotten so many deadheads, and then thousands and thousands of seeds. I'll show you the plants again. There are the plants. It's huge, as you can see, and that's just one plant, and there's the other one. That's the brighter orange colored one, and it still has tons of flowers on it, and the pollinators love it. And I'm so excited. This survived the winter, and now it's starting to be revived. It's starting to bloom. It's the yarrow, and I was hoping my zinnias would pop up. I threw some seeds in here, and it doesn't look like it. I don't know if it's being shaded out, but overall I'm still happy. I have a lot of beautiful blooms. Along with the orange are these society garlic blooms, these purple ones, and these are doing fantastic. And my chives bloomed, and they have little purple flowers. And my oriental and Asiatic lilies are coming up. And I transplanted my chrysanthemums into the ground, and they are doing fantastic with all the nutrients in the ground. They do well in the ground more than they do in the pots. As you can see, the stunted Asiatic and Oriental lilies in the pots, they don't grow that well. So I will transplant them out and have many more to come. The problem I'm currently having, and why I'm not transplanting things from the pots to the ground, is that in some areas I'm trying to basically solarize the ground and keep the weeds at bay, and so that takes up a lot of space. And then in other areas I have trees growing in the food forest, and I'm trying to grow things beneath the trees, little shrubs and herbs and things like that. But the other issue is it takes away from my spaces so that I can have areas to walk through. So and I'm always constantly growing things in any open available space. So as you can see, this whole entire area is packed full of plants. So over time, as this area right here is quite flat, I'm going to add some trees in these areas here, some fruit trees, and go straight across. And so this whole entire area is going to be food forest with many, it's going to all be food forest with many shrubs and other underlying plants below it. Look at that lush, beautiful rosemary. I love it so much. So yeah, I plan on having a really nice food forest with tons of food, but I also need space to walk. And so I haven't transplanted many of my starts because I need to figure out what I'm going to do, and I have to actually sit down and plan it out. I have been observing how where the sun comes in and stuff like that, and trying to figure out where to plant things. This whole area is nice. And another thing is I have, if you have a solar system and you don't want it to get blocked by tall trees, so that's another issue that I am trying to contend with, the design of the garden, so it doesn't block my solar system, but then at the same time I can walk through, but at the same time to grow as many fruit trees as possible, and vegetables and edible plants with a few pollinating plants spread around. So that's my issue currently. And just out of luck, these two plants, this really tall apricot tree there and this feijoa in front of it here, they got really tall and they're in the middle of the food forest. So the sun kind of comes from this side and goes all the way across on this side. And so what happens is one side of the garden gets hit with sun, but then towards the end of the day, then this side of the garden gets hit with sun. And when it does that, the side that in the morning that had the sun, some of it gets shaded out. Like right now, this side's getting shaded out by those tall trees because it's on this side of the sun. And later on, this side's going to get blasted over here. And this side's going to be shaded out right here by these tall trees that I have. And this side's going to get blasted. Right now it's in the shade. It's going to get blasted later. And that's actually wonderful because it creates a microclimate that helps at least 50% of the plants survive. And in turn, at noon, high noon, everything gets sun. So there are a lot of things that are helping each other out, providing shade for each other, or keeping the moisture and the coolness in the ground and covering the ground. So over time I expect all this stuff to be very the soil to be very nutritious, nutrient rich, and to provide lots and lots of food. And so I started this garden back in 2018, I believe, when I officially started to collect plants and put them in the ground, or 2017 or 18. And I started buying the fruit trees, and I started the actual permaculture stuff with the mulch way back in 2013 or 2014, and I bought like 100 bags of cow manure, and I bought the straw, and then I also later on I found out that the mulch was free from the city, and and I did the layering, the lasagna layers, and then I had the dilemma of I didn't know when I was supposed to start planting in that mulch, because you can't really plant in the mulch, and so I waited that season, and I didn't grow in that winter season, and besides that, winter was coming. So because I did all that work in the fall, so I thought, okay, by spring the mulch will break down and I can plant in it. Well, what happened was I had crabgrass in here. I don't know if it's St. Augustine's, I don't know what it is, but it is quite prolific, and despite being buried under layers and layers of mulch, it still comes up. It still comes up all the time. I'm always having to weed. It's quite a pain. However, I just keep weeding, trying to fight it back, and the mulch, I'm hoping that things will help break it down, and over time the plants will do better than the grass, and then I will have a really nice garden and a food forest. And I've been constantly feeding it with compost, constantly weeding, constantly finding trees that I like to put into the garden, and flowers, of course. As you can see, I just love the splashes of color amongst all the green, and I've seen a tremendous amount of wildlife that's come in, and eventually I will let the chickens roam. It's just that currently I've been trying to grow seeds amongst the plants, the trees. And then I also have these little short things like the society garlic. This one's established, so if the chickens try to kick around it, or peck at it, they can't really decimate it because this one's well established. But if I throw new seedlings in the ground, or if I have newly growing plants, they will definitely destroy them. And so for the time being, I have not let the chickens into this area unsupervised. So as I try to grow plants and collect different plants, I do have to contend with the dilemma of wildlife. So I have squirrels that eat all my pomegranates. So there's my pomegranate, half eaten. There's another pomegranate, half eaten. And so many of the blooms came down this year. It was chock full of flowers, and now, as you can see, not too many. And I'm covering that pomegranate. Yeah, they've basically eaten many of the baby pomegranates. Next, I have the issue, I don't know if you can tell, there's a big hole right there. And this has been kind of mussed up. And I had thrown some lavender seeds in here, 3 different varieties of lavender. And nothing's coming up, as this area of the soil has just been messed with one too many times by the pesky raccoon or possum or whatever it is. It's strong enough to dig a deep gaping hole right there. And I did the research, and it says that it's primarily raccoons that dig for grubs like that. Not possums are not strong enough to do that, I guess. But overall, as I find areas where I can put my fruit trees, then I'll plug them into the ground, and they do fantastic. And just as Never Enough Dirt has said, when you transplant a plant into the ground, it takes about a year for it to recuperate and establish its roots, and then it starts to produce for you fruit. So the other thing I'm contending with is maintaining those plants in pots and keeping them alive. And so I was so scared that this tree was gonna die, but it's got new blooms. New leaves and everything. So maybe it's just recuperating from the winter. I did accidentally throw some too strong fertilizer in here, so it might have done some damage. You know what, I really love fig trees because they produce fruit so early on, and they're just fantastic. They produce fruit even when they're in the pots. So that's a fantastic thing to grow, and they produce a lot of fruit, and they're easy to grow. They don't require too many things, and they're not too fussy, and it dies back. All the leaves fall off in the fall and winter, and then in the spring it just comes back. You think that it's dead, but it's a dependable, reliable fruiting plant. As I weed, I throw it on top of tall plants. So in this case, I'm throwing it on top of my jade plant, and it's fine because what happens is it protects the top here, and so when you remove it, the weeds, then it looks really good underneath. And what I do with the dried up weeds is I throw it in the coop, and it becomes the bedding for a little bit. And as the birds poop on it, the chickens, then after a while, of course, you gotta pull it out and just throw it back on the ground around your plants, not directly near the plants, and the nitrogen and stuff will break down and feed the soil. This way, these dirty buggers don't have a chance to re-root into your soil, and I love to do that.